Imagine walking into a room and instantly sensing a shift, not because anyone said a word, but because something in your presence has changed the way people act around you. The subtle smirks, the casual interruptions, the tiny dismissals, they start to fade, almost as if someone flipped an invisible switch. What if I told you that with just one simple action, you could trigger that exact shift in how people treat you? That the reason some people are constantly walked over while others command respect isn't luck, status, or charisma, it's psychology. It's the quiet, almost imperceptible signals we send about our self-worth, and the way we respond to the behavior of others. Today, we are going to uncover the hidden mechanisms behind respect and disrespect, and show how a single, deliberate choice can completely change the way the world perceives you. By the end, you'll understand why people stop testing you, why their dismissive behaviors disappear, and why your presence suddenly carries weight, even without raising your voice. Disrespect is rarely random. In most cases, it emerges when people sense ambiguity, when they perceive uncertainty about what is acceptable and what is not. Human interactions are governed by a subtle, often unconscious set of social rules, and when these rules are unclear, others tend to fill the gap according to their own preferences, which can sometimes lead to dismissive or disrespectful behavior. This is where boundaries become not just useful, but essential. Boundaries are the unspoken contracts we set with the world about how we expect to be treated. They are signals, often more powerful than words themselves, that communicate the value we place on our own dignity. By establishing clear boundaries, we are effectively drawing a line in the sand. We are telling others, without hostility or aggression, that certain behaviors are unacceptable and will not be tolerated. The psychological impact of boundaries is profound. When consistently enforced, boundaries create predictability in social interactions, which reduces the likelihood of being disrespected. Humans are wired to recognize and respond to patterns, and when a boundary is consistently maintained, it becomes part of the social expectation. Over time, even those who initially challenged or ignored your limits will adapt, because it becomes cognitively easier to respect someone who consistently demonstrates self-respect than to continue violating their space. This is not about confrontation or punishment, it is about clarity. The absence of boundaries often leaves a vacuum that is filled by others' assumptions and desires, which is precisely where disrespect thrives. By defining what is acceptable and what is not, we remove that vacuum and replace it with structure, predictability, and dignity. Furthermore, boundaries influence internal psychology as much as they influence external behavior. When we assert our limits, we reinforce our own sense of self-worth. There is a cognitive feedback loop at play. The act of setting a boundary signals to our own mind that we value ourselves, and our behavior subsequently aligns with that belief. This internal reinforcement strengthens our presence in social contexts, making it more difficult for others to dismiss or undermine us. The key is consistency. A boundary loses its power if it is enforced sporadically or inconsistently because it sends mixed signals. Others may test limits, either consciously or unconsciously, to see whether they hold. True respect is cultivated not in moments of anger or reaction, but in the quiet, unwavering demonstration of personal standards. In practice, boundaries can be subtle or overt, ranging from verbal cues to nonverbal signals like posture, tone, or even silence. The moment we decide to implement them with clarity and consistency, a noticeable shift occurs. People begin to adjust their behavior, often without realizing it, simply because they recognize, consciously or unconsciously, that the old patterns of disrespect are no longer tolerated. In essence, boundaries do not demand respect, they communicate it, and when consistently reinforced, they ensure that the social world begins to align with the dignity we hold for ourselves. Disrespect often thrives on reaction. Whether it is a sharp comment, a dismissive gesture, or subtle undermining, the response of the person being targeted plays a crucial role in reinforcing or discouraging the behavior. When someone reacts with anger, frustration, or excessive explanation, they inadvertently reward the disrespect, confirming to the other person that their actions have an impact. This is where the concept of non-reactive confidence becomes transformative. Non-reactive confidence is not arrogance, nor is it indifference. It is the deliberate cultivation of composure and self-assuredness that communicates, without aggression or confrontation, that the opinions or actions of others do not dictate your internal sense of worth. Psychologically, this approach works because humans are deeply attuned to signals of emotional vulnerability. Disrespect often arises when someone perceives that their behavior will elicit a reaction. By remaining calm, collected, and unshaken, we disrupt the natural feedback loop that sustains these behaviors. The person attempting to assert dominance or diminish you no longer receives the emotional engagement they expect. Over time, this lack of reinforcement leads them to reduce, or entirely stop, the disrespectful behavior. Essentially, non-reactive confidence transforms the social dynamic. It shifts the power balance, not through force or argument, but through subtle psychological signaling. Non-reactive confidence also has an internal impact that is equally powerful. When we learn to regulate our reactions, we strengthen our emotional resilience and reinforce our self-image. The mind begins to internalize the idea that we are in control of our emotions, and by extension, our interactions with the world. This creates a positive cycle. As our internal sense of stability grows, our external presence communicates strength and self-respect, further discouraging disrespect. Unlike reactive responses, which are often temporary and fueled by impulse, non-reactive confidence establishes a consistent, enduring signal to others that we are not easily manipulated or undermined. The practical application of non-reactive confidence can take many forms. It may manifest as a calm, deliberate pause before responding to a provocative remark, a measured tone that conveys seriousness without aggression, or even the choice to disengage entirely from conversations or environments that perpetuate disrespect. Importantly, the goal is not to suppress emotion or avoid confrontation at all costs, but to ensure that responses are intentional and aligned with a clear sense of self-respect. By doing so, we teach others that our dignity is non-negotiable and that attempts to provoke or undermine us are ineffective. Over time, this approach reshapes social interactions in profound ways. People who once pushed boundaries begin to reassess their behavior, recognizing that their usual tactics no longer yield the reactions they anticipated. The room shifts in subtle but undeniable ways, interruptions cease, dismissive gestures diminish, and conversations become grounded in mutual recognition rather than imbalance. Non-reactive confidence does not demand respect through threats or aggression, it earns it through consistent demonstration of inner strength, stability, and clarity. In a world where many attempt to test limits, the calm, composed, unwavering presence becomes not just noticeable but influential, signaling to others that disrespect is both ineffective and unnecessary. In life, respect is rarely granted automatically, it is perceived, reinforced, and maintained through the signals we send about our self-worth. By setting clear, unwavering boundaries, we communicate that our dignity is non-negotiable, creating a framework in which others learn how to treat us. By coupling those boundaries with non-reactive confidence, we remove the fuel that disrespect thrives on, demonstrating calm, composed authority that subtly but powerfully reshapes social dynamics. These two principles, when practiced consistently, are transformative. People stop testing limits, dismissive behaviors fade, and our presence commands acknowledgement without aggression. The message is simple yet profound: you do not need to argue, prove yourself, or fight for respect. Respect is not something earned through conflict, it is established through clarity, consistency, and the quiet, unwavering assertion of your own value. Implement this once, and watch how swiftly the world begins to recognize that you will no longer tolerate being undervalued. In that shift lies power, dignity, and the liberation of walking through life on your own terms.